Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined by Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel. And guys, speculation. That was the name of the game all day yesterday. Of course, there's some other news too, but speculation everywhere about Sark, about the Alabama head coach opening. But he settled it, I think.
I think it's good. I think, according to sources, that Steve Sarkisian is going to be a Longhorn, and there's no further source than himself. It's a great day to be a Longhorn. Steve Sarkisian, not only him, but also his wife, L'Oreal, texting Texas. Hey, if you have it on there, the president of the University of Texas, there you go, Blake. Jay Hartzell responds to L'Oreal Sarkisian's Texas with a fight. Texas expected to very much hang on to its head coach, Steve Sarkisian. There's Malik Agbo running a player commenting again on that tweet as well. Look, we're told that an extension has been agreed to. It's not signed yet or any of that stuff. But it's suffice to say, Steve Sarkisian hitting the road today will be on several different campuses across Central Texas recruiting for the University of Texas. The Longhorns also host at least one official visitor over the weekend. They've got that going on. They're still recruiting guys out of the portal, including Jamari Caldwell, the defensive lineman out of Houston, as well as C.J. Daniels, the wide receiver out of Liberty. What this means, though, is this. That means that if Steve Sarkisian is staying at Texas, the situation in Alabama becomes more interesting, because it looks like Kalen DeBoer is the odds-on favorite, followed by Mike Norvell and Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator at Alabama. A lot of those players could be hitting the portal as soon as today. So be aware of that. There are multiple players on that roster that anybody in the country would want, including Texas. So we are monitoring that. A lot of people have mentioned the name Isaiah Bond. Texas would most certainly be interested in Isaiah Bond, the big play receiver for Alabama. He scored a touchdown against the Longhorns this year on that deep route that Jalen Milroe threw. A lot of players at Alabama that Texas would be interested in. It also allows us to start talking more seriously about the replacement for Bo Davis. Right now, we can look at Bo Davis's replacement and say Texas is going to have to go at different kind of guys. Some names that I've been given. These are a couple of new names. First of all, Freddie Roach is not a new name. He's the defensive line coach at Alabama. If he doesn't stay at Alabama, Texas would be interested in Freddie Roach, I am told. Also, Ed Orgeron, the former LSU head coach, and Sark remain friends. Orgeron could be a candidate here, and that's not out of the realm of possibility. It's going to be a situation where it's a little bit fluid, but we'll see about it. Then another name that's come up, Zarnell Fitch. Zarnell Fitch is the defensive line coach at Texas Tech. Currently, he was at TCU under Gary Patterson. Pete Kwiatkowski and Gary Patterson are very friendly, as we all know. And it's being told that may have been a recommendation from Patterson to Kwiatkowski. So Zarnell Fitch at Texas Tech, Freddie Roach at Alabama, Ed Orgeron, who is he's a free agent right now, former head coach at LSU, but a longtime defensive line coach, is said to want to get back into coaching. He actually looked at being a defensive line coach at Florida, but couldn't make it work. So keep that in mind. Also, two other guys that are worth mentioning. Rod Wright, the former Longhorn, is an assistant to the D-line coach at the Houston Texans. Of course, they're in the playoffs this weekend. Frank Oakham, also the D-line coach at Toledo currently, the former national championship player for the Longhorns, has been the defensive line coach at Baylor as well as in the NFL previously. So all of these names coming up. But if you don't have a smile on your face after a little bit of concern yesterday about Steve Sarkisian and the Alabama job this morning, you got things wrong. The Longhorns look like they're keeping their head coach, Steve Sarkisian.
That's right. Well, some other news that popped off yesterday, guys, and it's something that, of course, we all expected, is that Quinn Ewers is staying. And, Bobby, I'm going to play this video real quick in case anybody missed it.
Longhorn Nation. Ever since I was a kid, I've dreamed of playing quarterback at the University of Texas. I couldn't be more thankful to all my teammates and coaches, and I'm grateful to be in the position that I'm in. God has shown me who I truly am these past 2 years that I've been here. And through the ups and downs, these fans and this university has always had my back. And with that being said, I'm coming back.
There you go. But you're gonna have that card back there. I know you are, Bo. I know you are, Blake.
I'm gonna work on it. I may need some help getting it though, Bobby. So I might be looking for a favor here soon.
All right. I think we need that card for your back display there.
That's right.
In your background.
No doubt about it. Well, guys, how big of a deal? I mean, obviously, like I said, it's something we expected. How big of a deal going into the SEC is Ewers' return?
Oh, it's huge. It's without a doubt the biggest win of the offseason, aside from keeping Steve Sarkisian, because that's your quarterback. That is year 3 in the same system that Quinn Ewers will be walking into while joining the SEC, in which the SEC could be, a little bit open now with no more Nick Saban down there in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, Kirby Smart at Georgia is going to be that team people are looking to knock off still. But Quinn Ewers adds a tremendous boost to the Texas offense going into next season. We already saw the jump from 2021 to 2020, or from 22 to 23, and that jump should sustain and be even larger from 23 to 24. Texas is obviously piecing together what you expect to be some pretty impressive pieces on the outside for him as well to continue this, what I would consider a rather high-flying, high-scoring offensive affair. So it's massive. That no bigger piece for the 2024 roster could have been added than an addition, or I guess return, of Quinn Ewers.
Bobby?
I think that it's huge. I'm in agreement with CJ. And the reason I say that is continuity. I think that the way you build things is improvement every single day, in every single way. So whether it's Sark getting on the road this morning, like we know for a fact, Sark I think he's set up to see at least six different schools today along the I-35 corridor. You do that by small wins every single day. While Quinn Ewers is a big win returning, it's another win that's chalked up, right? And so in my opinion, that's what I'm waiting on right now, is that next win, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be this junior day that Texas has lined up, Blake, right now, that has 50 plus people coming. You know what I mean? It's incremental wins each and every day that can make you end up being a great team long term. Now, you need big wins. You need Quinn Ewers coming back. You need Steve Sarkisian recommitting to the university. You need those big wins. Don't get me wrong. But it's go on to the next thing. What can we win at today? And I think that they won yesterday big, not only with Steve Sarkisian returning, not only with Quinn Ewers returning, but now they need to go win at the defensive line coaching position. They need to go win in recruiting. That's what's next, and that's how they keep going. I think Texas fans should be extraordinarily happy right now. Good hats off to 3 people yesterday, not only Steve Sarkisian and his family, but also I want to say congrats to Kevin Eltife, the chair of the Board of Regents. I want to say congrats to Chris Del Conte, the athletic director at the University of Texas, and Jay Hartzell, the president of the University of Texas, because make no mistake, their hands were all over this retention of Steve Sarkisian. If they weren't in combined forces right now, this thing would have been a much hairier situation for the University of Texas, because Steve Sarkisian, in my understanding, is the highest paid, or will be the highest paid employee of the University of Texas system. This isn't a small decision. Okay. This is a big grown man decision to put your money where your mouth is across a system as proud as the University of Texas. And look, I'm not just talking about football here. I mean, how many doctors are at MD Anderson? And, that have to make millions of dollars every year. I mean, these are people that have high-flying, good jobs, et cetera. But he'll be the highest paid person in the UT system with this extension, is my understanding.
Well, he no doubt about it has his veteran quarterback coming back in. Speaking of veteran quarterbacks, did y'all see that Casey Thompson now going to be heading to OU? I mean, talk about a journeyman. Went from Texas, Nebraska, down to FAU, now over to OU. Curious to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Go for it.
I was say, how crazy is it? I mean, you don't often see the Texas to Oklahoma flip or vice versa. We saw it with Brennan Thompson, but not, quarterbacks is a bit of a different deal, let alone one that started at Texas and is now, 4 years later almost returning to the same Red River shootout rivalry game on the other side. This is, it's taken forever, really, for Casey Thompson's college career to really start, I guess, rounding up, and I'm not sure we're going to see the end of it before another encounter. So, I mean, how crazy is it?
Casey Thompson to Oklahoma is the most appropriate thing I've ever seen in college football. After, detouring at Nebraska, then Florida Atlantic, now going back to Oklahoma. His dad, by the way, guys, had the most appropriate Sports Illustrated cover of all time. I mean, I was in school at Texas when this cover came out. Now, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but that if you actually remember this cover, okay, you were in school at Texas at the time, you're like, yes, you were nodding your head. Oklahoma's football program under Barry Switzer was just off the rails, I feel I don't mean to indict Casey by saying that at all. It's just more that Oklahoma football program was crazy. And that went off the rails at that point in time. But Casey, we actually wish you nothing but the best. You tried your hardest when you were at Texas, et cetera. We appreciate you. Best of luck, except one time, and that's I think October 12th this coming year in the Cotton Bowl.
It's crazy to me that he's played for Oklahoma's two biggest rivals, two of their three biggest rivals, I guess, in Nebraska and Texas both.
And now Oklahoma. I mean, he's played for all three. He's going to play for all three.
So, well, while we're on that subject, Kelly Hyden says, what do you think about 25-year-old men staying in college competing against 18 and 19-year-olds? Which is something I did want to ask y'all. So, great question, Kelly.
I personally, look, I get it. It's been happening for decades at BYU. So there's been some precedence for it. Now it's just the transfer portal and the COVID year that are exacerbating. It's also the NCAA taking a more lax viewpoint on eligibility. I mean, the NCAA is basically saying we're not going to fight people over eligibility very much. We're generally not going to do that. And the reason why is simple. They don't want to get sued by somebody for not getting their stuff. Casey's dad presided over Peter Gardier's wedding. This is true. Gardier and Casey and Charles Thompson played together in the Canadian Football League. Charles was the quarterback and Peter Gardier was the punter, and they got to know each other there. And so they actually have a lifelong friendship.
There you go. Yep. And then Oklahoma State, they're going to have a seventh-year quarterback this year as well. So State of Oklahoma got the experience at the signal caller position, no doubt about it. Okay, guys. Well, Bobby, before we move on, why don't you let folks know how they can escape the insurance trap?
Yeah, absolutely. BKCW, our friends there have done a great job of trying to help people escape the insurance trap. If your business had a frustrating insurance or employee benefits renewal, most likely you didn't hear from your agent all year. And then right before it was time to renew, they delivered the bad news of a rate increase. When that happens, it's called the insurance trap. BKCW tries to take you out of that trap by providing actual risk management consulting, not just price quoting. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risk. BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies, restaurant groups, breweries, and nonprofits in Central Texas escape the insurance trap. And it all starts with a free risk assessment. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started with a free risk assessment or claims audit and escape the insurance trap.
And we want to thank them for sponsoring each and every Friday right here on Texas Football. Well, guys, plenty of time to get your questions in, so please do so, and we'll get to as many as we can. And let's go back to the portal for a little bit here. UTX Horn says, any news on the tight end position?
So a couple of thoughts here. Texas is looking at a couple of opportunities. One of them is Ben Urisic, a tight end out of Stanford that is going to be a grad transfer. But there may not be a rush on Ben Urisic at this point. And you're going to ask why. Well, just like Ryan Sanborn didn't join the Longhorns until the summer of last year, the punter, you got to remember that Stanford guys graduate in March. So he couldn't be a midtermer no matter what. So we expect Texas to engage and try to get Ben Urisic on campus in the next couple of months, as well as possibly look at other tight ends that go into the portal, perhaps someone from Alabama, for example. Okay, if that were to come to pass. Also, they've checked in on Holden Stays. It sounds like he's sticking with Tennessee at this point. Jordan Jolly out of Connecticut. We're trying to figure out exactly all of this pieces of the puzzle, but the Stanford player doesn't graduate till March. Maybe a little bit of a holdup there. They're not going to take him in. They wouldn't be able to get him anyways until the summer months. So that's the situation at portal tight end right now.
Real quick, Casey says there's a Miami tight end who's petitioning the NCAA for a 9th year of eligibility. Holy crap.
That's crazy.
I mean, you could be a doctor. If you would have done it right, you could have been in med school. You could have your first year of residency by that time. That's an amazing amount of an amazing.
That is insane. I'm gonna have to ask my buddy about that one. Okay, here we go. Let It Fly says, are there any portal options who would be a day one starter?
Well, Andrew Makuba. I mean, they've already got a couple. Matthew Golden, Trey Moore is going to definitely fight for one in that category. He'll at least be in the rotation. I think CJ Daniels would be. I think Jamari Caldwell would be. That's the thing with Texas, and I know the pitch that they're giving these guys. I mean, it's CJ Daniels went to Auburn. He was one of 4 wide receivers in the portal that were on a visit at the same point in time. Well, Texas's comment to CJ Daniels was, you're one of 2 people here. One's a defensive lineman, one's you. We're not throwing spaghetti against the wall here. We're trying to isolate a few people that we want. And CJ Daniels was one of those. So Daniels, by the way, expected to visit LSU this weekend. So he's not just looking at Auburn, Texas, Florida. I do think it's down. I think it's Texas versus the field right now on that one. We'll see if Texas, if he ends up doing anything. And I will say this. If the dam breaks at Alabama for any reason at receiver, I think all bets are off on that. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. We're going to go back to tight ends for just a second. King Me says, as of now, which position group is the bigger question mark? Tight ends or linebackers? CJ, I'll let you start.
I think it's linebacker just because there's multiple on the field at the time for the most part. Texas has, a pretty good understanding of what Gunnar Helm will bring to the table right now. just in the sense that you can hide tight ends in your scheme for the most part as well with, whether it be 11 personnel, you split them out wide. Texas doesn't necessarily have to go into 12 personnel all too often. And if they do, Malik Agbo has proven to be a pretty solid inline tight end option as well in the run and pass game from out there. So while the vertical threat is not necessarily going to be as prevalent as it was in 2023 as a result of no more Jatavian Sanders, I do think that tight end spot is a little bit more, at least well-positioned right now, as a result of knowing who and how your strengths are going to play out on the field as a result of Gunnar Helm and that room still having some familiarity with one another in that room right now. Linebackers more of who's going to be that big guy to step up for Jaylen Ford and really replace what he lost. I think that is the biggest piece. David Benda coming back is clearly, a tremendous win for the Texas staff in 2024 as well. But I mean, Jaylen Ford for 2 years was really that main piece in the middle of the Texas defense in which everything went through him. Texas rotated a lot on their defense. Jaylen Ford seemingly never came off the field. That, to me, is going to be the biggest hurdle to overcome and replace than tight end.
So good question, first of all. I actually am different than CJ here. I agree with everything he said. And what I mean by that his passion for Jaylen Ford is legitimate. I mean, the guy was a rock for Texas. All right. I mean, just solid. Okay. I do think they're better situated to handle the loss at linebacker than they are to handle the loss at tight end. Now, Gunnar Helm is a good one tight end. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But no one is proven behind him. At least David Benda has seen serious reps. Mo Blackwell is in that category too, seen serious reps. Leonga Lafau, the coaches are clearly very high on, has even seen some reps. Darian Gillette in that category as well, probably. So, I feel like linebacker's a little bit better situated than tight end right now because tight end, you have one that has truly played. Juan Davis, he hasn't played much, and he's not we know he's not exactly ideal size for what Sark likes to do and how he likes to use those guys. Spencer Shannon is still on the come a little bit. He's only a true freshman right now. I feel like tight end is a little bit bigger of a overall question mark. I think with Anthony Hill and David Benda and Mo Blackwell, you have definitive answers. And CJ, I will add this. Sark doesn't really hide his tight ends. He wants them to be a focal point. So I worry more about that position right now than I do linebacker. I will add this. Kendrick Blackshire, the linebacker from Alabama, it was up in the air. He had been scheduled to visit Texas this weekend. As of late last night, it's up in the air whether or not he's going to visit Texas this weekend. Silas Bolden, the wide receiver out of Oregon State, still scheduled to come in. Bolden will not be a mid-year graduate though. He won't be there for the springtime. He'll have to wait until June as well, I believe. So Kendrick Blackshire up in the air as of this morning, or actually as of late last night when I got the latest news there. As far as Bolden, he's still set to come in.
Okay, guys, we got a super chat. Let's talk about defensive line coach for a minute. Defensive tackle coach Justin Yarbrough. We'll start off with his. He says, Bobby, and by the way, Justin, thank you for the super chat. Bobby, what are the odds of Sark hiring Coach O? He would be a home run hire, in my opinion. And Bama fans aren't happy on the boards. They really wanted Sark.
I don't know about. I can't give you odds on Coach O. Only that is a. I think it's. Unless Coach O comes out and says, no, I'm not interested, which he has not done at this point, I think that there's a possibility. I mean, I really do. So we'll see if it actually happens. It would be, when I say home run hire, it would be the candidate that would knock it out of the park. It's not even, there's the 400-foot home run, and then there's the 550-foot home run, right? This would be the 550-foot Yordan Alvarez thing goes over the top of the bleachers type thing. so there's that. I do think there's a real possibility as of yesterday. Now, things could change on this. I've mentioned Freddie Roach at Alabama, Zarnell Fitch at Texas Tech as well. I think are getting some play, but clearly that would be big. The thing about Alabama, and the second part of that question, Justin Yarbrough asked, was about Alabama fans and Steve Sarkisian. Of course they wanted Steve Sarkisian. Of course they did. He just took them to the playoffs. He has ties to Tuscaloosa. He is a Nick Saban protege. Of course they wanted to keep it what they feel like was in the family. I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, think about it. Also, I find it interesting, and I will say this, the overtures from Alabama to Steve Sarkisian were very real. So anybody thinking, oh, Sark wasn't really, they were very real, I'm told. So Texas and Steve Sarkisian coming out and saying what he did last night, the Longhorns moving forward, got to feel good about that. But what I would say is what's interesting to me, here are the three finalists we now believe for the Alabama job. Number one is Kalen DeBoer, okay, Washington coach. Number two is Mike Norvell, Florida State coach. Number three, people are saying, is Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator at Alabama that really did a great job in retrospect with Jalen Milroe this year, right? I mean, they came out, looking like dog, you know what, and ended up looking in the college football playoffs. They turned that thing around on offense, and hats off to Tommy Rees and Jalen Milroe for doing that. But all three of those guys, DeBoer, Norvell, and Rees, all offensive guys. Think about that. And this is Nick Saban, he's doing the hiring with Greg Byrne. I mean, there's no way Greg Byrne is not going to have Nick Saban's, anointment on this job. And so all of those guys, including Sark, offensive coaches. What does that mean for a Nick Saban guy who's a defensive coach? It means that's the future, in his opinion, of college football, is the offensive side of the ball.
Bobby, you mentioned Zarnell Fitch earlier out of Texas Tech, and Gosnell wants to know, is he a good recruiter?
Yeah, I mean, he is. That's kind of what he's been known for. He was the head coach at Lincoln High School in Dallas, so he's another South Dallas guy. He also was at TCU after that and player personnel, and then he went to TCU and actually became the defensive line coach for Gary Patterson. He was a National Defensive Line Coach of the Year in 2017. A lot of you guys may remember Ross Blaylock, the defensive lineman out of Houston area that Texas wanted, A&M wanted, everybody wanted. Fitch got him over both of those programs. He went to Texas Tech with Joey McGuire when Gary Patterson was fired, and immediately got that job. So he's a name to watch, I'm being told. I'm not saying he's a favorite, but just a name to watch.
There you go. There's his history right there for those that aren't very familiar with him. So we're going to stay on this subject for a minute, guys. And this next question from King Me says, which defensive line coach out there would you consider to be the best recruiter out of the ones that have been mentioned thus far?
Well, Coach O certainly comes to mind with his history and how his reputation kind of precedes itself in the sense of creating and establishing relationships with everybody. You go back to those LSU days. I know there are so many stories of Coach O just walking into living rooms and winning over mom and dad almost immediately. And so if you're able to do that on the defensive line and kind of use his ties, not only, on the defensive line, not even really in the Southeast, but also, in California and where else he's been, because he's been a lot of places. He's a guy that I think, his relationships and whereabouts have been all over the place and held in very high regard.
I'll just say this. Ed Orgeron, if you were in the Cotton Bowl in 1991, Ed Orgeron was on that Miami staff that had all of Cortez Kennedy, all those dudes. Just, he can recruit defensive linemen. He was the defensive line coach on that team. I am just telling you, the dude can recruit.
Definitely was.
And evaluate. That's the thing about some of these guys. Some guys can just recruit names off a list. Other guys can evaluate. Ed Orgeron can do both. He is a great recruiter, especially along the defensive line.
Well, we talked about recruiting. We've talked about evaluating. What about developing? Sid the Lizard says, which is the best developer in y'all's opinion?
I don't know that. I don't know. I don't know enough about Freddie Roach. I don't know enough about Rod Wright and Frank Oakham, even though I followed their recruitments and follow them as Longhorns. I don't know who the best developer is.
Well, we'll find out who Sark thinks it is.
Yeah,
eventually.
Good way to put it.
Sure. All right, we have another super chat from Just a Dude. He says, "Can y'all name any defensive line players that Texas might take from Alabama if they entered the portal, or who might Texas be interested in?"
I know Jaheim Otis would be one that I think a lot of teams in the country would go after almost immediately. One of those prime nose candidates that we've been talking about the importance of having. Clearly, Texas is after Jamari Caldwell at the moment as well. Jaheim Otis is one who's only a sophomore or was a sophomore this past season. Certainly one that would intrigue a lot of interest from just about everybody in the S.
Yeah, Jaheim Otis is one. I mean, look, there are people that have guys, and then there's people like that Alabama has. Nobody has, other than Georgia. Those two teams, maybe Michigan now, have a different caliber of defensive line right now. They just do.
Well, guys, let it fly. We're going to go over to the Alabama coaching search real quick. He says DeBoer was scheduled to be on a radio show this morning in Seattle, but that has been canceled. I had texted y'all about that yesterday. He said, "Is he going to Bama and we can put all of this to rest?" I mean, it sure seems like it. What do y'all think?
Bama fans want it to be over. This isn't something that they're used to. What's it been, 17 years since they've gone through any sort of search like this? I think it's something we've gone through quite a few times.
Yeah, I think that it'll be DeBoer. I mean, Blake, you brought up the Vegas odds at this point. The thing that's interesting is that Nick Saban asked for 48 hours of his existing players to not put their names in the portal until they got a new head coach. Okay? Well, it's going to be coming up on 48 hours in about 6 hours from now. Okay? So we'll see what all that means. I can guarantee you that a lot of this will be, I can guarantee you this. They probably made a couple of different offers at this point, and it's probably down to numbers. And I know that UW is going to try to keep Kalen DeBoer. I just don't know that you can. Because you're talking about an Alabama program that frankly is willing to go to 12, 13 million for the right guy. And I don't think even by going to the Big Ten like Washington is, they only get a prorated share of the Big Ten money. Well, they just don't have that kind of cash flow. They just don't. Now, if some private donors step up and DeBoer says that's where I want to be, but let me ask you this question. After you saw Washington, do you really think they can get the players they need there to win a national championship? They were one game away, no doubt. But do you really think they can get the amount of players they need at Washington versus where you're at in Alabama? And if you're uber competitive like some of these coaches are, I don't know that you can.
Yeah. We're going to stay on DeBoer for a second. Courtney says 2 questions about him. Does he fit in the South at all, like a program like Bama coming from the Pacific Northwest? And is he a good recruiter? Obviously, you kind of just touched on the recruiting point there, but what do y'all think?
Well, I know he's a good developer of talent and a guy that can certainly recognize it. You don't turn Indiana into a 9-win program without being able to do one of the two. Indiana's long been a dumpster program down in the Big Ten. He took them to heights that they had never seen before, and COVID kind of cut their run in a little short there as well. But what he was able to do with Penix, not only there but also in Washington, while assembling the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line and 3 NFL wide receivers all on that same offense. He can figure out how to get the pieces together to put together a very good team. Question mark, like you said, is obviously whether or not he can get the talent that puts you over the top in terms of the national presence and winning a national championship. I'm not sure, because a lot of that is the result of being a territorial, kind of recruiter and having an impact in some of these big, areas and regions where, your defensive line and linebackers just are a little bit different.
The one thing I don't worry about at Alabama for any head coach is recruiting very much. And so the reason I say that, I drove through Tuscaloosa the other week. Okay. Within 3 hours of Tuscaloosa, there's Atlanta, Memphis, Nashville, Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi. And within 5 hours, you add New Orleans, Tallahassee, all that area down in there. I mean, there's South Georgia. You can trip over yourself finding good players down there. And just like at Texas, there's always going to be guys that grow up in the state of Alabama that want to go to Alabama. And Alabama per capita is one of the richest romping grounds for NFL talent. So all of that put together, I don't worry about recruiting as much. Saban put it on steroids. Well, I'll be clear. And so I don't think he's going to ever I don't think Kalen DeBoer is Nick Saban in that way, but Kalen DeBoer is a more innovative coach than Nick Saban. Nick Saban's a grinded out guy. And now a grinded out for excellence, don't get me wrong. But Kalen DeBoer is 104-12 as a head coach. And the idea that he's a Pacific Northwest coach is somewhat incorrect. He's more of a Midwest. He's from South Dakota. Okay. He's not from the Pacific Northwest. He's been successful at Sioux Falls, which is, I think, his alma mater. As CJ mentioned, he went to Indiana and made them a 9-win team. He left. The Indiana coach gets fired 2 years later. Okay. He goes to Fresno State, makes them a winner almost immediately. He's 21-3, I think, or 20. Was it 21-3 or 20? I can't. Something crazy at Washington. Okay. He is a winning dude now. If Steve Sarkisian would have left, I would have said, go after Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
I think he is a great coach wherever you put him. At Alabama, you have a special situation because recruiting, I don't want to say it ever takes care of itself because there's effort involved, but you can get players there. It's right smack dab in the middle of the richest territory in the country when it comes to recruiting.
Okay, guys. Well, I need to say cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped, because your resolution shouldn't be the only things that are well kept. 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, what you got right here, is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're looking to maintain a trim or go for that clean-shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. It's trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, and now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with our exclusive offer. Just go to manscaped.com, use code ONTEXAS for 20% off, and they're going to give you free shipping as well. Happy New Year or happy new balls. And introducing the MVP of 2024, Manscaped's 5th generation lawnmower. It's not just a trimmer, it's your grooming sidekick. It's equipped with 2 skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. It's like having a personal stylist at your fingertips or, well, wherever you need it. And did I mention it's waterproof, fellas, because the trim in the shower is the only way to start your day. So get 20% off and free shipping with code ONTEXAS at manscaped.com, because nothing says Happy New Year like a deal that leaves your balls and your budget feeling refreshed. Embrace the new you and definitely embrace the new trimmer, courtesy of Manscaped. They should just make
I'm
me the
imitating Blake in his final moments there.
national. I really think they should just hire me as their national spokesperson, Bobby. It's that simple. I'll write and be the spokesperson. I mean, it's a win-win for them. All right. Brandon Huey here with the super chat says Aaron Butler will see the field next year. Mark it down. What do y'all think?
It's going to have to take a really strong, early session on campus for Aaron Butler. We've talked about how tough it is to crack that circle of trust at the wide receiver spot. There are, several wide receivers ahead of Aaron Butler right now that have a similar skill set and approach to the play style that he possesses as well. So, I would love to see it. I'd love to see him, maybe in a return game as well, but Texas has guys there. So it's going to have to take a strong showing early on for him to really start making headway towards getting on the field very early.
Well, let's talk about another guy out west, and that's Johnny Nansen, the new linebackers coach for Texas. And Let It Fly says, are there any options for Nansen to bring with him at linebacker?
Not that I'm aware of, nor I don't think Sark is into doing that, by the way. I don't think any college coach really wants to do that, like hire the guy and then have that guy go into the portal and come along with him. That's not the right way to go about your business in college football. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I've ever seen that happen really much. I mean, now Holman Wiggins may be trying to do it if Isaiah Bond, and Holman Wiggins, the new A&M wide receivers coach, was at Alabama. I can see him doing it if Isaiah Bond goes in the portal, but that's a different story because the head coach retired, right? I don't necessarily see someone do it. Maybe Jalen Hell goes in the portal, the wide receiver that out of Longview that Texas finished second on, committed to Alabama and signed with Alabama last year, and Holman Wiggins wants him at A&M too. I mean, I can see that happening again because your head coach retired. But rarely do you see, in fact, if someone can mention a situation like that, let me know. Because even Michael Penix didn't go straight to Kalen DeBoer. He stayed at Indiana while Kalen DeBoer went to Fresno State, and then Lincoln Riley. There you go with Caleb Williams and Mario Williams. That okay, but that speaks to maybe that person too a little bit. Or both those people, right? I mean, seriously,
yeah.
Not just, and I'm talking about not just Caleb Williams, but Lincoln Riley in particular.
Yeah. Well, before we rehash the news, real quick, guys, I got one more Nansen question for y'all. Nathan says, Bobby, since you only named defensive line coach candidates, is it safe to say that Nansen is staying strictly at linebacker coach? Some outlets said that he's been considered for defensive line coach.
I think that he's linebacker coach until proven otherwise. And so that's what I've been told. That's what he was initially hired for. Okay. Don't kid yourself there. Bo Davis had told Texas he was returning last week. Okay. The situation changed at LSU this week. So Nansen was initially hired for the linebackers coach. Could that change given what we know now? Absolutely. I don't think it is, but hey, if they find a linebacker coach they like better, maybe. Nansen and Sark go way back. They're great friends. And Nansen has history not only at linebacker, but also defensive line.
All right, y'all. We've had a ton of people join us right here on Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. So let's go back over the big news of the day. Of course, we opened with all the speculation yesterday, especially with Sark going to Alabama. So, Bobby, I'm going to let you speak on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Here it is. It's a great day to be a Longhorn. Steve Sarkisian tweeting this last night. His wife also tweeting Texas, followed up by a tweet from the University of Texas President Jay Hartzell that responded, fight. Texas appears to have reached an agreement with Steve Sarkisian on a contract extension. There's a tweet from Malik Agbo as well. Look, all signs point to Steve Sarkisian remaining with the Longhorns. He'll be on the road today, making it, I believe, to at least 6 high schools across the Central Texas area today. CJ, you're going to be out and about today at different high schools as well. Be interesting to see if you run into him anywhere. But my point being, and what Texas fans need to take of it, it looks like Alabama's overtures to Steve Sarkisian were very real, number one. Number two, Texas and Steve Sarkisian seem to have made a choice and come to an agreement. So remove that angst or that concern a little bit. If you're a Texas fan, smile a little bit on the way. You know what I mean? But we'll see where Alabama ends up with its head coaching search. It looks like it's going to be Kalen DeBoer out of Washington, if not Mike Norvell from Florida State, or maybe hire internally Tommy Rees at the offense coordinator, which I don't necessarily think would be a good hire. But Nick Saban knows he's the one I think making the call here.
And then can y'all give a quick rundown on where Texas stands regarding the portal?
I could try. Jamari Caldwell is still out there. The defensive lineman, we're waiting to hear word on him. Clearly, Bo Davis moving on to LSU has complicated that. Secondarily, Texas is waiting to hear from C.J. Daniels, the wide receiver out of Liberty. He's visiting LSU this weekend. LSU, Texas, and Auburn seem to be the play right now. I think Texas is ahead of the pack at this point. We'll see if they continue that after a weekend visit to Auburn. Silas Bolden, the wide receiver out of Oregon State, is expected on campus this weekend as well. We are not sure at this late juncture if Kendrick Blackshire, the linebacker out of Alabama, is still coming into Texas this weekend. That was actually up in the air as of late last night. So those are the portal moves. Texas waiting on a tight end and monitoring the portal for any additions that might be forthcoming for a team that whose coach just retired.
All right, y'all. Well, let's take some more questions here. And let's start with Lexi. Lexi asks, what players that didn't see much playing time last year will have a breakout year this upcoming season? I'm going to let you name one on offense and one on defense.
Well, I think the easy one to point to is Jadhae Cook on offense specifically. I think only 8 catches this year. He had the one big one against Baylor in which a lot of people saw the promise and kind of potential that he could bring to this Texas offense with as many guys that have left. And we've kind of pounded this kind of talking point into the ground a little bit, but Jadhae Cook is primed to have an explosive breakout year for the Texas offense this year. Bobby, I also like Leonga Lafau a little bit. I'm not sure if you're, following suit with either of those 2 picks, but those are going to be my 2 guys. I'm really high on him and what he brings to the linebacker position.
Well, I think Jadhae Cook is an obvious one. I do, because I think he's started to break into that circle of trust at receiver, right? And we've already seen we've already seen C.J. Baxter, so you can't say that he's going to have a bigger part in it, right? I don't necessarily think any of the true freshman offensive linemen are going to be that guy on offense. I think it's Cook and or DeAndre Moore. I think that Trey Wisner is a possibility on the fringe there a little bit. CJ, even a guy like Spencer Shannon, depending on what happens at tight end, might be that guy, right? So I think that Cook, though, is the runaway favorite on offense in that regard. Arch Manning is a different category. I think that if Quinn Ewers gets hurt, I don't think there's any question the answer is Arch Manning, actually, right? Beyond that, on defense, I can see Lafau, but my choice on defense right now, given that Derek Williams, you can't really count him, and Manny Muhammad, they already saw time. Same with Anthony Hill. I will go with Jelani McDonald over Leonga Lafau at this point, given that David Benda's returning. Those would be my choice. Blake, I asked a question like this, similar to this, on our YouTube community thread. This is what people came up with. Lafau and Jelani McDonald there with a little bit. Trey Wisner. Look, Jadhae Cook overall, though, just runaway favorite, CJ, to your point.
That's a significant margin of victory there.
Yeah. Almost 3,000 votes, too. So it wasn't just a small sample size, right? These are a lot of people, a lot of Longhorn fans that kind of see it similarly that we just discussed.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to take some more questions here. And Jeff C. says, what time do you think the orange and white game will be, trying to fly in and fly out the same day? Bobby, can you give the details so far on what's been announced?
So I don't know if a strict time has been announced yet. I know it's been announced. It's going to be April 20th. We talked about this the other day. Would it be the 13th or the 20th? It's usually around tax day, April 15th. Well, they decided to go after it. So it's April 20th, which is interesting. I don't know if they'll have in the afternoon, a midday. I know Texas has a baseball game that day, and sometimes they try to weave it kind of intermixed with that. But mid-afternoon would be my guess, so they can get the kids out there and doing like one of the things, Blake, that you did last year with your son, I know, was go and get in the autograph line, right?
The extremely long autograph line.
Yeah, but seriously, that actually has to take place, right?
Yep.
Those kinds of things. Texas tries to make it spring game, not just totally about the game, but also the fans getting to experience a little bit of what Texas game day is like. Getting the players out, signing autographs early, that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's going to be an 11 or 12 o'clock kick, is my point. 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock would be the earliest, is my guess.
Yeah, so I actually just looked back, Bobby, while you were talking. Last year, it took place at 1 p.m., the year before 6 p.m., and then the year before that, 1 p.m. So 1 p.m. may be a safe bet considering 2 out of the last 3 years, that is when they actually did it. So we'll see what happens there. But speaking of the spring game, let's look forward, or let's look ahead to that. What are some of the things that y'all are hoping to see from that game, or maybe that you're excited to see even?
Oof. I'm excited as any year to hear about the battle in the trenches. I think this year there should be a couple of themes that are pretty prevalent early on, and that's a dominant running game for the Texas offensive line. And I also want to hear just how often the edges are starting to get pressure on the tackles. Those are two pieces in which I think the trenches specifically will take a step in the right direction for 2024. You talk about Trey Moore's addition, Colin Simmons' addition as well. These are guys that you hope to pair with Barron Sorrell, Justice Finkley, Ethan Burke, who are also taking steps in the right direction for their own game. How often are they getting to the quarterback? And then in the sense of the offensive line, I mean, you return so many pieces on this offensive line. Again, the continuity is there despite maybe moving a guy or two around on the offensive line. But you're no longer going against a guy like Tavondre Sweat or Byron Murphy in the middle of that defensive line. This should be a time in which I hear a lot about the Texas running game really breaking off a lot of runs, really starting to get active and pushing guys around to create big holes in the running game. That's something I'm right now looking forward to, and that could change, obviously, with the addition of Jamari Caldwell or even another piece out of the portal on the defensive front.
Bobby?
What I'm most looking forward to is the development of the receivers and who they are. I want to see who's replacing Xavier Worthy, who's replacing 80% of the Texas pass game. Worthy, Whittington, and Adonai Mitchell. The other thing I would be looking for is the young secondary, depending on we still have to look. Jadhae Barron, in all this news that we've had this week, Jadhae Barron has remained silent.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting on that. But I do think that we know that there's going to be a young influx in the secondary this spring. I want to see what that looks like. I think that's a little exciting to me because I know what Makuba can bring. If Barron's back, how does this all mix? What does Jelani McDonald and Derek Williams do together? Where's Warren Roberson? What about Xavier Filsaime, Wardell Mack, Kobe Black, Jordan John, all of those guys? I think that's going to be exciting. And then Arch Manning. I just hear such good things about that guy behind the scenes. I think it's a gift that he's sitting a year. Texas fans are underappreciating that if that's possible. Okay. Like I said, he's trying to play football for the next 20 years, not just the next 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian have to think a lot of that. But Quinn Ewers is going to improve all that stuff. But excitement, receivers, excitement / question mark, receivers, young secondary, and another look at what Arch Manning is turning into.
Well, you mentioned Jadhae Barron, and obviously, like you said, we're waiting on an official announcement. But Shane says, what are y'all's gut feeling on Barron? Do you think he stays or do you think he goes?
A part of me wants to say that he's waited this long to see what would happen with Steve Sarkisian before making a decision as well. I lean, if I had to pick, I'd lean a return, but it's slim. Like I said, it was 50-50 a couple days ago. The fact that it's drawn out this much, I do think he's trying to fix or kind of, get what was behind the scenes nicked up and ready to go so that he can return. That's kind of where I lean right now.
We'll see what happens.
There's no reason for him not to have announced if he's going pro already.
Very true.
And he's already accepted the Senior Bowl bid, so he could say, "Well, I've already announced too." So I could see this both ways, guys. I think it's up to Jadhae. I think it kind of depends on what he got back as a draft grade. I don't think it's going to be as high as maybe he wanted, is my opinion. And I do think that there's a substantial NIL package there for him at Texas, like there was last year for him. And so all of those things combined are meaningful. I don't know. I just don't know about Jadhae. I think he's going to make his own decision, make his own time up. I think it's, if it was categorized as 50-50 earlier in the week, I would still lean that it's probably 50-50 with a little bit favoring his return at this point. Otherwise, I think we would have seen an announcement. But maybe he's also waiting for his own day. I mean, geez. I do want to say this about Quinn Ewers. And people were pontificating that Quinn Ewers and his timing of his announcement were proof that he had conversations with Sark that morning about his returning and all this other stuff as it relates to Alabama. The two things were totally unrelated. He had not spoken to Sark that morning. So there's none of that was out. It was predestined because that was a promotional deal with the card company, by the way. So that was, a lot of people are trying to tie that together. You can't tie that together. He was coming back to Texas or coming back to school no matter what. That decision had been made. He wanted one more year of college football.
Okay, guys. Well, let's talk about this from Dax Kelm. CJ, I'm going to let you answer this. He says, I saw an LSU-centric tweet from Melvin Hills this morning. Better get that defensive line coach hired. CJ, what are you hearing on Melvin Hills in that situation?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was LSU-centric. I saw it as well. It was more just kind of letting God take over the timing and trust and everything along the lines of that. I actually spoke very briefly with Melvin Hills last night following the news of Bo Davis to LSU. Basically just told me I'm trusting Steve Sarkisian. He wants to see what happens with this defensive line hiring, just as everybody else. But again, he committed to the University of Texas. He signed with the University of Texas, and Steve Sarkisian is going to be that head coach at Texas. Melvin Hills is, like many of these other defensive linemen that are signed, just eager to see where Sarkisian goes. But he expressed a strong faith and trust in Steve Sarkisian to figure out who that next defensive line coach will be. Right now, he's just in the waiting pattern, just as the rest of us are. So, not necessarily anything that leads me to believe that he's going to request a dropping from his NIL or NLI or anything along the lines of that. He's just in a holding pattern, just as we all are.
Well, Too Broke to Pay Attention wants to talk about a couple of other young defenders and look ahead to 2025. He says, I have a way too early prediction that Zena and Colin Simmons will be the starting ends in 2025. What do you guys think?
They would probably have to pass up Ethan Burke at that point. One or both of them. I don't know. I think Ethan Burke's got a chance to play pro football long term. That's going to be hard for anybody to pass him up. It doesn't mean I'm right. I feel like, look, and I'll say this, the way PK and those guys like to rotate, they need 4. They're wanting 4 at every position. And then what I mean by that, defensive, they want 2 on each side. They want 2 defensive tackles on both sides. they like to rotate. They like to keep people fresh. And you know what? I mean, Texas just played, what did they play, 14 football games this year? That's a lot of chance for injury. Name a position that wasn't affected by injury all year. Seriously. Quarterback, yes. Running back, yes. Wide receiver, yeah, Xavier Worthy and was out or not, was hampered multiple times. Tight end, JT Sanders hampered multiple times. Christian Jones, an offensive lineman, missed a game. Maybe defensive tackle wasn't hurt by injury, even though Alfred Collins was out a couple games. Defensive end, Ethan Burke was out a game. Name a position that wasn't. A linebacker, I guess. Even though we know now that, by the way, Jalen Ford played with a hernia problem all year long. You know, so Jadhae Barron had a toe injury all year. Ryan Watts was out at corner. Every single position you can think of, Texas had an injury this year. They're looking for depth. So whether or not those guys are the starters, Zena and Colin, Texas needs 4, in their opinion. They need 4 defensive ends that they can rotate.
Hey, we're going to come back to defensive line talk here in just a second, but Texas football just posted this, so I want to share this with everybody. It says, just getting started.
I came here to win championships. That's the goal. We're here to chase greatness, to win championships. This is the University of Texas, and people are going to want to be part of it. It sure is great to be on the 40 acres.
My understanding, I can say this now. My understanding is that they have agreed to an extension. It's not finalized, but Texas is very confident. Steve Sarkisian obviously excited about it as well. Look, good luck. I think that all Texas fans right now should be excited about what's going on. Now it's time to take this and just improve day by day by day. You know, what's the next focus for the Longhorns? Well, it's recruiting. Steve Sarkisian, as we said, is going to be on the road today recruiting. So that's the next piece. By the way, we haven't even talked about this junior day. CJ, I've got over 50 names now.
We're going to have to get together because I just hit 60 last night. So it's exciting. We've talked about very briefly the names of who is coming in. There's so much talent, Bobby. This is a very impressive junior day list. People want to see what Texas is like when they're good. And this is, a prime example of it. Yeah. And man,
I was talking to somebody today. This is the best junior day list I remember since Mac Brown. You agree with that?
Since I've been covering recruiting, this is the 1-1.
Fair. To the victor go the spoils, my man. That's the way it's said.
All right, we're going to go back over to defensive line talk. We got a lot of questions about it and the future of it. Rob Enfield says, Bobby, where are we thin now? Is the defensive line going to be okay?
I think I think that's the question. The interior defensive front, playmakers on at edge, maybe, unless I guess now with Colin Simmons coming in and Trey Moore, that could be changing. But I worry most about the interior defensive line out of every position on the field right now. That's my biggest concern. They have to have at least one big body, if not 2, step up next year. Could that be Sadir Mitchell and Alex January or DeAndre Robinson? I don't know. But they have to have somebody on the interior step up, period.
And then you mentioned Colton Vasek a minute ago. Clayton wants to know, how has he been developing? Will he see the field next year?
It'd be great if he could find his way into that rotation. We've talked about the bodies that are there. The big thing for Colton is getting completely healthy from this season. I know he's a little nicked up dating back to his senior year at Westlake. Necessarily didn't have a great spring health-wise either. So getting on the field and really just being able to show what he can do will go a long way to his development and progress to seeing the field in a regular manner because he was a very big, impressive win on the recruiting trail at the time of his commitment over Oklahoma. The Texas staff prioritized him, went after him, got him. Now it's about putting him back on the campus, getting him 100% healthy, and seeing just how they can mold and shift his game into one that can see the field. But right now, it's got to be about getting his body 100%.
Well, guys, before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everybody how they can escape the insurance trap.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friends at BKCW continue to sponsor us here at On Texas Football. We really appreciate them. The insurance trap is that term used when a insurance agent for your business reminds you and knocks on the door at the 11th hour that you've got to re-up your insurance for the next year. And oh, by the way, there happens to be a rate increase that you were unaware of. When this happens, the agent is really providing no value, and you're stuck in what we call the insurance trap. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risk. We use them personally here at On Texas Football. Proud to do that. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started with a free risk assessment or claims audit and escape the insurance trap. Thank you guys very much for sponsoring On Texas Football.
Okay, y'all, we have a couple of questions about some other younger players, so we're going to get to those. We're going to get this one from Bo Tex Knows. He says, how's Will Randall progressing as the tight end? Have y'all heard anything on that front?
Well, I know he was another guy that needed to get healthy by the time he got to campus. I know he had a bit of a knee injury his senior year of high school back down at Isidore Newman. That is, again, kind of a hindrance if you're not able to get on the field. I know that he should be back to fully healthy at the moment heading into spring workout or spring football and winter workouts. So that's going to be something to watch. Right now, I don't have anything more than, a guy that Texas was hoping to get, back on the field in a 100% health capacity than right now.
And then this next one about DeAndre Moore. Lexi Coker says, what y'all take on him?
Fingers crossed. I think Texas and Sark like him a lot. They like it. He's got some nuance to his game. The question is he explosive enough to really become a it factor for Texas? That's kind of the question mark around him. They know he can run the routes. They know he can get open. Can he become an it factor for Texas?
And then one other one that we're going to ask about, Mitchell Murphy says, any chance true freshman Jordan Washington sees some playing time?
I don't know. I have twofold, kind of take to this, because one, I think his athleticism and kind of verticality, ability to stretch the field vertically is something that, when you look at the current bodies on the Texas tight end room, there could be a little niche role that he could, kind of work out. It's really only him and Juan Davis that provide that kind of approach in terms of play style. But at the same time, you can't just be on the field as a tight end to catch passes in Sarkisian's offense. You have to be on the field to block. I think he's only about 215, 220 at the moment. You're going to like to see him at least 15 pounds before that thought gets to your mind, especially in the SEC. So there's going to have to be a lot of reshaping and remolding of his physical stature, and before we're able to even, kind of ponder the idea of tossing him out on the field. I think we'll see some snaps of him against, kind of the early non-conference team, maybe in a garbage time or blowout mop-up situation, but I would be surprised to see a lot of Jordan Washington year one. Tight end's not necessarily a position where you see a lot of early playing time for tight ends. Just look at what happened with Jatavian Sanders and the weight that he had to go into before really becoming the guy at the spot.
Okay, guys. Well, we're going to do one final question here. And, yesterday we had David Farron throw it on talking about NIL and collectives. And I wish he would have came on today after the Florida State news broke this morning. And that's what this next question is about, from Seth Dudley. He says, what do you think about the 2-year probation of Florida State regarding NIL violations? Are either one of you familiar with that story enough to comment on that?
My thought on it is that Texas is a little bit situated differently. Coaches aren't running people to the booster's house, and Florida State is they just did things a little sloppily, in my opinion. So we'll see how that all goes. But I don't want to sit here and point fingers. I think the NCAA is trying to make a point out of a team that has already been dogged on enough, to be honest with you. I mean, hasn't Florida State gone through enough at this point after not getting into the college football playoff in 13-0? Now Alabama's talking about poaching their coach. I mean, like, at what point is enough enough?
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, especially for Florida State.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby. Well, before we get out of here, can you let folks know what to expect later today right here on Non-Texas Football? I know you guys will be back this afternoon, of course. Tell them about that.
Yeah, at 1 o'clock today, we're back with the live stream. Myself, Rod, CJ, we're going to be talking a little recruiting action. CJ's getting on the road to cover some schools this morning. We're going to do that. CJ, I don't know if you're going to be able to be with us the whole time. We'll be talking about Sark as well as the defensive line coach, and hopefully we'll get some news out of Jadhae Barron as well later this week.
Okay, y'all, well, that's going to do it for this edition of Coffee and Football. We want to thank BKCW for sponsoring today's show, Manscaped too, of course. Thank you all for tuning in and for all the super chats. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and there's no better time than now to ring that bell so you're notified anytime a new video is posted or whenever we go live, because breaking news this week has just been unreal. And so that way you won't miss a single thing. And for Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you on Monday morning. Have a good weekend.
Have a good